Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me for today's live stream. It's threatening to rain out there. We'll see if we get some weather during today's live stream. This is actually the first live stream of the week, so that means it's time to gift some memberships. Here we go. Let's see here. Thank you all for your continued generosity, which I try to match myself. Let's see here. And as always, memberships are the best way to support this channel because not only does it help the channel, but other people benefit as well. Hey, Melissa, thanks for all the popcorn. It looks great. Thanks, Rogue Frogger. So there's a lot going on this week, you know. I've been watching a lot of screeners. There's a big trailer from Disney debuting tomorrow. We'll see which one it is. It's not out. It's not Avengers. But it will come out tomorrow and I will react and break it down. I'll be covering that tomorrow. Then on Saturday, the X-Men 97 Season 2 review embargo lifts at 4 p.m., which is pretty exciting. And then on Monday, House of the Dragon Season 3's review embargo lifts, which I'm excited to discuss with you as well. Hey, Kareem, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your generosity. We're going to go through these fantastic 3 stories of the day. You can ask me your questions and comments after each story. And then, of course, as always, we'll do an Ask Me Anything at the end of the stream. And thank you to everyone who joins, member or not. It's so nice to have you here. Hey, Dancing Dog 60. Thank you for gifting those memberships. All right, so let's get started. Story number 1, that's right. Boop. Okay, so the Odyssey might be a Christopher Nolan movie, but it's also expected to hopefully make around $1 billion. And so it's got to start looking like a blockbuster. And Universal is kicking off that promotion. So they're doing some really interesting things. So yes, you want it to be a blockbuster, and a blockbuster has to feel like a blockbuster. It has to, and it's very interesting. The space is even so different than it was back when Oppenheimer came out. Although Barbie, of course, had all these bells and whistles. I think it's interesting that, well, to this day, Christopher Nolan has yet to acknowledge Barbie. I think he is learning from Barbie, and he's not above the Odyssey having some of these things itself, which I think is very clever. And I think they're managing to, so far, still maintain the dignity of the film. Because it is also an awards contender. That's interesting. Barbie got nominated for Oscars, but didn't really, just won Best Song. But, how do you maintain that balance, where you seem like a popcorn summer blockbuster that can get to $1 billion or close, but at the same time feel like you're still, serious awards fare, right? Because so often the industry feels, as Don Draper so famously said, the money's the reward. And so if your movie makes a lot of money, sometimes they feel you're good. Although Oppenheimer, of course, was a huge Oscar winner. Although that makes it harder for Nolan to repeat. The Academy tends to be pretty democratic. And so they're like, you had your moment in the sun, the golden sun there, Nolan. You don't necessarily need any more, certainly so close back to back. Maybe that's why he's okay with doing this promotion. Thanks, Caleb. I agree with Ben. I think he really needs this movie to make $1 billion. It's a tough marketplace. I think he wants to make sure it seems like it's a big deal. And while it did crash the app, AMC tickets, it was crazy. You couldn't get into Fandango, you couldn't get into the AMC app, but there are actually quite a number of tickets still available, particularly depending on where you live, for premium screens. And the regular screens haven't even gone on sale yet. So if you don't care how you watch the Odyssey, don't worry, they got you. You're going to be good. Okay, so now today's movie, and you're particularly seeing it this summer. I've never seen it kick in. Well, maybe it's because I'm now on TikTok and Instagram, so I'm new to the space as well. But I think it's really interesting. I have a funny little anecdote for you. So I saw, while I was scrolling through the TikTok, I saw a little bit of a blurb from Jon Favreau, who said, the game is totally changed. And it's no longer about going and doing an interview with somebody who has the biggest audience that might watch casually, but instead you want to go with someone who has a smaller, more potent audience that's more loyal to them. Which, I've spoken to some people about this. I still don't think they're doing it the right way. You'd be shocked how little Hollywood knows about the online space. Like, they don't do any research, any follow-up. It's crazy, right? So, you could tell them that you have a loyal fan base and they would believe you, particularly if a company told you on their behalf, right? But I chuckled to myself because this, of course, was an older interview, and we all know that The Mandalorian and Grogu tanked at the box office. So how's that new strategy working out for you? All right, so hilarious. All right, so yes, but you are seeing a lot of professional interactions, and you're seeing these people at the premiere now, and you're seeing them at the junket. I think it's crazy you would invite people to a junket who have no journalists, they don't even pretend to be journalists. But instead, it's kind of like a social media summit. And they're like, here are our stars, make content with them. And I think that's very interesting. I think there is value to someone who can do something good there. Although a lot of the times I see very poor interactions with celebrities where I'm like, this means nothing. I think right now social media is still getting a lot of mileage out of just having, more intimate interactions with celebrities. I still think most people aren't bringing anything to that dynamic, except, having an ability to film it. And, they got there first, so good for them. So that's crazy. And I don't know if it works if the influencer is a fan, because of course they're a fan. They make money as a fan, And I've yet to see the influencer that will be brutally honest. They want to get invited to the next event. Having that access is important to them. And so it's a very, I think it's a new thing, and we'll see how it works out. I mean, already, Disney invited, speaking of The Mandalorian and Grogu, they invited all those influencers to a little interaction with Pedro Pascal. And everyone was like, what do you mean fans? Those are influencers who might not be paid to be there, but certainly make money off of the interaction because it gives them content to post online. All right, that's another thing, by the way. Side note. I think that Aaron Sorkin might be surprised about how the social reckoning goes down, because a lot of people these days, even at, varying degrees, but a lot of people make at least a little money off of social media, particularly since Elon Musk, monetized Twitter. So, Hollywood and Aaron Sorkin are being like, oh, it's bad for you. And I think, it's no longer just a company that would suffer if you would bring that down, but there's just tons of people who rely on that for at least some kind of financial assistance. So I'll be curious to see how that breaks down. It's a very interesting change. And I guess that's actually kind of smart to give more people skin in the game, right? Because otherwise you're like, who cares what happens to that billion-dollar corporation? Okay. So, also fan interactions. I went off on a tangent I did not anticipate, but that's the beauty of live. Okay, so fan interactions. I think not only do you want to have all these professional influencers come in and make content, but you want to have regular people interact with your product as well. So that's very smart. You just want to, I thought, well, again, it doesn't necessarily translate to box office. I thought that Masters of the Universe, aka He-Man, had one of the best social media presences I've ever seen. I thought it was incredible. I think they did such a wonderful job promoting that film online. And their movie is a disaster financially. So I think they're still trying to figure out how to translate, again, back in the day, it used to be like, just because you can sell a lot of magazines at the newsstand doesn't mean you can sell a movie ticket. And I think that, you're seeing the same kind of a thing happen with social media. But yes, you want to have some kind of a thing where people take photos and post them online just themselves, because anything to get people talking about your movie to make it seem like it's a big happening event. So one of the things that they've done is they've built a real life giant statue of the Trojan horse. I still think that the way this horse is positioned makes it hard for anyone to sit in it. When they built it, I'd be like, "Are we supposed to sit in this for hours?" And they'd be like, "Yeah." And I'd be like, "Then why did you make it so we're all going to be on top of each other?" And they're like, "Whatever, man. I already built it. I'm not doing it again." So it's hilarious to me. Like in the past, you've always seen the Trojan horse as like a bench, basically with legs on it, really big legs. And they're like, "We all just sit in this little barrel." But maybe they felt this would be harder for you to think that there were people in it. Because you would be like, "No, what are they all on top of each other?" And they would like, "Yes, we are." Okay. So they built a real life giant Trojan horse statue. And right now it's at Venice Beach, where a lot of people roller skate and stuff. And they just want, there's a lot of traffic there. So they really want to get a lot of eyes on it there. But the smartest thing, in my opinion, is they're going to put it in front of Universal City Walk, at Universal City Walk, which is the downtown Disney of Universal. And it's very popular in Los Angeles where they're putting it. Particularly because there's a fantastic AMC theater there that has a great IMAX screen, etc. So yes, so they're going to put it there, and I think they're going to get a lot of photos. In fact, I believe there's a little rope hanging from the bottom of this statue. So you can pretend, I hope, it would be amazing if you could, pretend that you're climbing out of the statue. I hope nobody gets hurt on it because then they're going to get sued. But that's pretty clever, right? This idea that you're like, "Oh, I was in the Trojan horse, man, here I come." So I think that's pretty clever. It's a good marketing idea. I think it's a very good marketing idea. Then also, they have a popcorn bucket. Now, their first popcorn, I think these popcorn buckets are funny because they get more and more. Forget about holding people. How much popcorn can this thing hold? Not a lot. So I think that's pretty funny that the popcorn bucket's I think there's a Lobo one for Supergirl that holds like a cup of popcorn. You're like, it's a toy. Let's not pretend that it's a popcorn bucket. Masters of the Universe had like the best popcorn bucket I've ever seen. I saw it online, where you could put a soda in one of the turrets, and then another turret held candy of Castle Grayskull. But again, still nobody went to see the movie. All right. So I think that the popcorn, so they're going to have a popcorn bucket. The first one is an IMAX camera, but then they also announced, and they also going to have one that's a Trojan horse. So I think that's kind of fun. And they had a really cute online promo where they put the popcorn bucket next to the statue. And when they zoomed in on it up close and some bikes went by, you were like, "What is the size of this statue?" And then they pulled out and you were like, "Oh, that's the popcorn bucket." Oh yeah, when I saw it first on social media, I was like, "How did they make such big popcorn kernels?" And then I realized when they pulled back that it was really tiny. And then, the bicycles were far in the distance going past. It was clever. It was a very, as I watch more and more TikTok and Instagram, I start to, I think, get a good idea of what I feel is a good spot that not only is able to grab your attention in a very limited amount of time. Like the shorter your video, the better, I'm finding, which I think is crazy. But yet still at the same time have some merit to it, for some reason that people, to feel good that you watched it, like you're not just whittling away your life on garbage. That's how I feel as a TikTok and Instagram watcher, Sometimes I'm like, "You made me stupider." And then sometimes I'm like, "You made my day better," and I appreciate it. I don't buy popcorn buckets. I think they're a very expensive hobby, and I don't know where on earth you would keep so many popcorn buckets. I even feel like I've run out of room for drink toppers, to be honest with you. Okay. But it doesn't stop there with the popcorn bucket and the statue. Christopher Nolan just got quite the honor this morning. And that's where Alamo Drafthouse, Sony, Alamo Drafthouse, of course, is now owned by Sony. So they decided to name their flagship San Francisco theater after Christopher Nolan. They were like, "We're going to call this the Christopher Nolan Theater." They're not going to put his name on the marquee, but they're not going to change. It was before called the New Mission Theater, and they're not going to take that away because it's historic. But apparently when you go into the movie theater, particularly near the 35 millimeter and 70 millimeter theaters, they're going to have Christopher Nolan all over it. They're going to be like, "This is a Christopher Nolan theater." I think it's funny that nobody brought up that people are unhappy with the change in Alamo Drafthouse's policy where you go on your phone to order food, interrupting the movie and totally flying in their whole mission statement to begin with. They very conveniently left that out. See, that's why people like that kind of journalism and influencers, because, I would include that. I'd be like, an Alamo Draft House sure could use this because they just ran smack into a lot of bad publicity with their new their new policy. So yeah, so I think that's pretty hilarious. But yes. So they're naming the theater after him, and what do you know? They're naming it after him right when the Odyssey is about to come out, which I'm sure shall play there in 70 millimeter. And in fact, Christopher Nolan is rumored to be showing up there for some sort of event in the next few weeks, maybe to open the Odyssey. So I'm very curious to see what the next steps will be, because they're only getting started, and there's a lot of noise to cut through. They are 2 weeks before Spider-Man Brand New Day, although they're apparently having a lot of problems, which nobody can discuss. I'm sorry, but you're seeing it online. Then they're a week before Comic-Con, which means it's going to be pretty busy with that. And then, of course, they come out, well, I don't think Moana is going to be too much competition for them, but, right out of 4th of July. 4th of July is like this weird kind of black hole of space, although Superman did pretty well coming out the week right after. But yeah, so I'm very curious to what the premiere is going to look like. I hope they go all out in the premiere. I hope they have a giant boat. I hope maybe it'll be at AMC City Walk with the statue. I hope they have like people in armor marching in formation. I want to see it all. That's when I want to see it. That's, I want them to go all out on that premiere. I think that would be really cool. Okay, any questions or comments about this story before we move to the next one? That's right, J. Jonah Jameson. You're allowed to report on that, on the Spider-Man problems. Let's see here. Have Nolan arrive in the horse? That would be pretty hilarious. And then say, who's your daddy when he comes out? It writes itself. I think it's funny that Robert Pattinson was like, I got to read the script before I sign on. And then he saw all the daddy comments and he was like, sign me up, baby. Instead of being like, do you really think my character would say daddy? Christopher Nolan was like, oh, you didn't say anything about giving me notes. Hey, Bubbles. Nan, Spider-Man couldn't come out in the middle of July because it would not be able to have any premium screens. Nolan's got that stuff locked down for at least 2 weeks. And I don't even think they can even get IMAX, even with the delay. Fahad says, do you think the Odyssey will suffer with its demographic? Well, I'm curious. It's interesting. It kind of ties into a little bit of the Doctor Who conversation we're about to have. I think, obviously you want to expand your horizons and your fandom. But Christopher Nolan, he's leaned in a specific direction, just ever so slightly and quietly for his career. And it's served him quite well. And for the very first time, he's moving away from that. And I'm very curious to see how it affects his movie. X-Men Superfan says, you think Robert Pattinson improvised those lines? That's hilarious. Hey, Michael. Away says, you spoke about influencer reactions. Do you think the Toy Story reactions are genuine? Well, I think, of course, I think you have to look at the source, you can tell who's an influencer and who's like a legitimate critic, right? And so just always be very aware of who you're watching, And they serve different purposes. You shouldn't dismiss either, but you should know what you're looking at. I think that's important. See, I can see already the divide between, some people feeling it doesn't feel like a classic Christopher Nolan film, and some people excited for him to expand his horizons, That's funny, Benjamin. Moana is a little like the Odyssey. They should make a joke about that, although they might get booed off the internet. I don't know. I think The Rock would have to be careful on that one, but I think it's pretty funny. I did watch the new trailer this morning. It was just so low energy. I don't understand why his performance is so low energy and why nobody gave him that note when they were filming. They were like, why are you at a 6? Maybe even, dare I say, at a 5 when Maui lives at an 11. Hey, Danny, welcome back. All right, I think we're ready for the next story because everyone's just saying the Odyssey's boring. Okay, we'll see how it does. Okay, it is, at this point, it might be a little hard to pick up some tickets. But, you know, I always pick up like a backup ticket and stuff, you know, and I was able to get a Dolby ticket really easily. Like IMAX, that ship has sailed, but you can get a Dolby ticket pretty easily, I think, if you're careful, and especially if you're willing to go a little earlier in the day. Okay, Nolan should have a Batman cameo in it. He kind of does, right? With that black armor, the black metallic armor. Okay, story number 2. Let me get myself, I mean, these are such tightrope conversations, but this was such a big one today, I felt I could not ignore it. But I have to say, a part of me was like, why do you make me have to have these discussions, Hollywood? All right, boop. So this morning, many people on the internet rejoiced as it was reported that Doctor Who, one second, why is this not working? Okay, so this morning, many certain types of fans rejoiced as it was announced that Doctor Who had been canceled. That was the headline that made the rounds, although it's a little misleading, but there are certainly big changes afoot at the BBC's flagship show. Their one claim to fame over the years. It's an interesting situation, and I think it reflects a bigger balancing act, speaking of balancing acts. Okay, so something that was definitely canceled was the upcoming Christmas special. And apparently Christmas specials are really big in the UK. I remember everyone said that their Christmas was ruined when Downton Abbey killed off Dan Stevens in their Christmas special. They were like, "You've ruined Christmas! Thanks a lot." Which I thought was very funny. Dan Stevens wants out. Okay, so this Christmas special has been canceled. And it was supposed to have the Doctor gets reincarnated. Usually, sometimes, it used to be at the end of every season. Now it's after a couple of seasons when they're ready for a new one. And he had been reincarnated as one of his, best friends. He usually has a companion, a female companion, and it was Billie Piper's Rose Tyler. She was apparently going to be the Doctor for at least the Christmas special. So that's now not going to happen. And that was the picture that followed the headline in a lot of places this morning. Now, what really happened was that the showrunner, Russell T Davies, who first raised Doctor Who like a phoenix from the ashes and then destroyed it like a roller coaster ride and plummeted back down into the ashes. So they were like, "It's been one heck of a ride, Russell, but you've got to go before you do irreversible damage." And I think to a lot of Doctor Who fans, it was a lot like when Kathleen Kennedy finally left Star Wars, right? Probably later than she should have. I think Russell T Davies probably should have been shown the door a little bit a while ago. But you know how slow companies are to act, and also I think they hate, especially with this narrative of toxic fandom that has arisen, I think they hate to seem like they're bowing down to that, right? Thanks, Alpaca. But I think that's a negative approach to take, because I think that, while there certainly is toxicity out there, it's horrible toxicity. I had to report someone today on Twitter. It's ridiculous. But, although Twitter doesn't really do anything. But anyway, that doesn't mean there isn't still good criticism out there, particularly from the people who build up the base of your franchise, your fandom. Like, it's one thing to want new fans, but that doesn't mean you don't need your original fans, especially since new fans are going to only kind of trickle in, right? You don't want to swap them out. So, yes, Russell T Davies, he's out of there. And they are going to shop Doctor Who around to a new showrunner, which I think is a really great idea. I think it's very healthy for the brand. I think it's time. I think that Doctor Who not only kind of lost the plot, it's just like what happened to Disney when the B storyline became the A storyline. And even Bob Iger acknowledged that that was an issue. And I think that's what happened to Doctor Who. And so I think they're going to shop it around. I think they're going to get someone who's tonally a little different. And I think it could be a great idea. I think they can maybe get someone who takes it a little more seriously. I mean, there's so many great streaming shows these days. Doctor Who should be like that, right? And unfortunately, for the past couple of seasons, it hasn't been. It was back in the day. I think, wasn't Matt Smith got famous being a doctor, David Tennant, and then who's that other guy, the older guy? I think Matt Smith and David Tennant were the two most famous new Doctor Who's, and that's probably when it was at its high point. And then it went, very poorly after that, So, I tried to get into Doctor Who. Doctor Who is very British, Peter Capaldi, thank you. Doctor Who is a very British show. So, it's trying to have global fandom, and it does to a degree. But, Disney Plus, as some of you were mentioning, Disney Plus tried to cash in on this and have it be an exclusive to their streaming service outside of the UK. And, it was unfortunately right when it was just going a bit too far for some fans, and it ended up not being worth it to Disney Plus, and they dropped the deal. But I think I think you could get somebody pretty good, and I think a tonal shift would be refreshing, It would just be a refresh of the show. I think Doctor Who, unfortunately, ended up going down the path of The Acolyte and She-Hulk. Two shows, I enjoyed to clarify, I enjoyed the first half of The Acolyte, and then I agreed that after that, it really went downhill, and I thought it was offensive to the Jedi. And then I liked She-Hulk, but I could understand the criticisms of She-Hulk. She-Hulk was for too narrow a fan base, and that would have been fine if it had been a cheaper show to make. Like, if it had been as inexpensive to make as Agatha All Along, I think She-Hulk would have a different story, And also, I have to say, everybody who worked on Agatha All Along never fought with anybody. And I think that Tatiana Maslany, is a little bit, I guess because she's Mark Ruffalo's Marvel cousin, she got a little bit, perhaps a little bit too proactive. And so I think she might have created a little bit of problems there. But I think Doctor Who did join this lineup, and these shows have all had issues. And this brings us to the conversation we've been having, and this is in many spaces. We just talked about it with God of War LaFay last week, and that's, the balancing act of maintaining your original fan base, yet somehow managing to bring in new fans. And that's the dream, where everybody likes your product, right? That's what you want. And I think the first season of The Last of Us on HBO did a wonderful job with that. Really wonderful. And then they, Craig Mazin. And I think they were poised to finally fix the mistakes of the way the second game was received. Because I actually think the second game of The Last of Us is really good. But then Craig Mazin just took his own, that's the other problem. It's not only swapping out the B for the A storyline and reversing them, but a lot of times you get a showrunner who has their own agenda, and it's not to serve the source material, which is a real shame. And I think that for the second season of The Last of Us, Craig Mazin started to maybe get too drunk with his own power. He was like, look what I accomplished with season 1. Let me see, I'm going to push it even further with season 3. And he lost his balancing act, which is just really unfortunate. Also, you can't truly understand the scope of The Last of Us Season 2 if you break it up into multiple seasons, which is what they decided to do. And so that's a big problem. I think the Last of Us hate for the game is forced. Season 2, Last of Us 2. But I don't think it's forced for the second season of the show. I think that was pretty horrible. So I feel like Doctor Who broke a lot of new ground and did expand the fan base for the show. But then it just started to go then too far in that new direction. And again, I guess it's the pendulum effect, but that means they're going to find themselves, this getting a new showrunner is going to have the pendulum effect going more to the middle. And that's what you need to do. You want to have a balancing act where everybody feels like they're still welcome or are welcome to join. And I think that's really integral. And so I would hate to see Doctor Who abandon the progressive elements that it added, but I don't want to see it drown in those progressive elements either. And that's what I think eventually ended up happening. So I'll be curious to see what they decide to do. I'm very curious to see who the showrunner is going to be, and I'll be curious to see if it's too late, as it has proven to be, at least so far, for Star Wars. And Marvel is also struggling. What do you guys think? Any questions or comments about this story? Oh, you think Harry Potter will run into this issue, Mystic? That's an interesting prediction. I hope not. I think the new Harry Potter looks excellent. Ben, I think She-Hulk did, I think it did okay. I think it caused a lot of damage. It's like saying The Last Jedi made $1 billion, so it wasn't a problem. It was like, I think it caused damage, and which is a shame. I don't think that it needed to. I think it was the writer's fault. Jessica Gao, I think, from Rick and Morty. I think Tatiana Maslany was really well cast, but I think they leaned a little bit too much into certain, I think they forgot why She-Hulk was popular with the original fandom in the first place. I think they were too concerned with the audience they were going after now and not the core Marvel fan base that's going to show up no matter what that you need. Hey, Halo. Secret Invasion was just an affront to everything that is, comic bookdom. I like Last Jedi too, Cam, but you can't deny that a lot of people really hated it. Faye, I think that, at the end of the day, it always boils down to how are the sales, ticket sales, game sales, etc. And so, until you start to see significant purchase power from these new fans, they're not going to have the sway that the original fans do. And that's the issue. You have to be able to, succeed with the fandom you have. And so that's really important. All right, I think we're ready to go to the next story here. Okay. Speaking of women in gaming. Okay, I'm so happy for Asha Sharma. Because Kathleen Kennedy really made it hard for female executives. Every time a female executive would pop up in the world of Kathleen Kennedy, Star Wars, everybody got scared that this new female exec would be a new Kathleen Kennedy. And Kathleen Kennedy had her moments. She did some good things, but I think the worst thing that Kathleen Kennedy did was that she openly fought with the original fans. And for some reason, did not feel, she actually said she felt she owed them nothing, which was a very odd approach to take, and she paid the price for it. But unfortunately, she dragged a lot of other female execs and directors and other people and writers down with her, creating this false narrative that women simply cannot exist in these spaces, which of course is not true, so that was very frustrating to see. So when Asha Sharma was named the new CEO of Xbox, right on cue, a lot of those same complaints came rushing up with people quick to brand her the Kathleen Kennedy of Xbox. And it was very scary. And there's been a lot riding on her for other women in these businesses and even fans, wanting to prove that, we not only can belong in these spaces, but can contribute to them. It's a battle I find myself fighting every day. Okay, so what did she do? I think that just like Kathleen Kennedy is a good example of what not to do for a female executive in genre spaces, Asha Sharma is turning into an example of what to do. And I think that's really great. So the first thing she does was she lowered Game Pass prices. You might say these are obvious things, but then why don't more people do them? It was very clever of her to do this. The first thing she did, I'm sure that she's going to try, just the very fact that a woman of color is the head of Xbox, I think reaches out to the new fans that we're trying to see in these spaces, who want to be in these spaces. But she very cleverly realized that she does need the core Xbox fandom. And she was like, what can I do? Everybody loves it when you save them money. Very smart. Very, very smart. So check, saved people money. Then she brought out the Xbox. And also, by the way, they said when they raised the prices for the Game Pass, they lost millions of subscribers, which is interesting, which shows there is a pain threshold in terms of nickel and diming consumers in the video game space. Whereas before, I think video games felt they were like a black hole. They're like, we can just nickel and dime them to death, baby. You know, with in-game purchases and stuff like that. So then she released during Fanfest on Sunday, Xbox 25th anniversary console, which a lot of people really liked. It's the see-through, like electric green console, which calls to mind not only how people these days like to build their own PCs that are see-through so you can see all the parts inside, but it's a callback to the very first Xbox console. So people were very happy with that. You know, I think that's the other thing. She's respecting the legacy of the brand. You know, she's not throwing it out like Kathleen Kennedy did. She's like, look, the origin story of Xbox, no matter where we take it, is important. And that's really great. I think that's wonderful that she paid attention to that. And then she gave it away free to every fan in attendance at FanFest. You know, people said she pulled an Oprah, but I got to tell you, it worked wonders for Oprah. Oprah had her favorite things, and she gave free stuff away all the time, and it made her famous. I'm sure other things made Oprah famous, but giving away the free stuff was a big thing. So she gave it away to every person who was in attendance at FanFest who had a fan designation. She didn't give it to press for free, but she gave it to everyone there who was a fan. I'm sure they're a little bit more aggressive fans than other people, but it was pretty cool. Also, it really made people perk up. They were like, oh, maybe we should go to these events because we're going to get free stuff. You know, people love when you give away free stuff. I think it was very clever, and I think that this is something that people should consider going forward, particularly female executives, because I think it isn't expected. You know, I think that female executives have to overcome the mom image. And what does the mom do? The mom tells you your stuff is stupid. She tells you to put stuff away. It's time to go to bed, to do your homework. You know, I've always felt this was a problem, and I've always hated this depiction of moms because there are fun moms out there. My mom is a very fun mom. And so I really want, like my mom, one of the most famous things she ever said to me, like my mom always wanted me to have a good time. And she picked me up from school one day, and I was like, what should I get for an after-school snack? I can't decide between these two things. And my mom looked at me and she said, why choose? Get them both. And that had a profound effect on my life. And so I think like I want to see more women having that fun party vibe, you know, and not like the drunk girl vibe, you know, which is the other extreme in the opposite direction, but the woman who can have a good time at the party and contribute to it and everyone likes having there. That to me is really fantastic. And so giving away the free stuff, I think, creates that vibe. And she also dressed very well for the event. She wore like a cool bomber jacket with Xbox logos on it instead of trying to dress like a female executive. And she wanted to dress like the rest of the group, which I thought was really awesome. She's doing such a good job. Some people complain that she gave out free Xboxes, but there's always going to be people who complain. I'm so happy that Asha ignored them instead of getting pulled into a toxic situation where she would say something that she couldn't escape, right? And for the most part, the response to her has been really fantastic, which makes me so happy. I do love Madison the drunk girl. She's a really fun example of that. She's the drunk girl through the female lens, which I think is interesting. All right, then, also she's fighting for more Xbox exclusives, which I think will annoy some other gamers, because I know when the PlayStation had their State of Play event, people were upset about their exclusives. So I can see that people get very upset about exclusives, but of course, Xbox owners love them. So I also just want to say the importance of presentation and messaging. This is something that I always think about, and then I think that I'm really happy to see Asha thinking about, and I hope that other female executives start thinking about. You know, a lot of times people will come into other spaces and they'll go, why can't I just do what I want? And you're like, you can, but everyone's going to not like you. You know, I think there's something to be said for being able to read the room. You know, not that you can't take the room in new directions, but you can't do that if the room doesn't like you. So I think her presentation has been phenomenal. I love her styling. I love the way she dresses. She's wearing a green shirt for Xbox. I loved her bomber jacket. I think she fits in really well. You know, she seems cool. She seems current, but yet she still also seems like she has some authority, which is important as well. Then messaging. I haven't heard this woman say anything bad about anybody, which I love. I love that she's done that. She hasn't done that. She has not said a negative thing about anybody, even when they said all these horrible things about her when it started, right? She wasn't like, well, it's unfortunate there's a toxic aspect to gaming. That's what a lot of other female executives would have said. That's what Millie Alcock said. And it's a horrible thing to do because it just just be the change that you want to see in the world, right? As that famous lyric goes. So I loved it. I loved it. Hey, Hall. Okay. I saw her talking at an event because now I'm very interested in Asha Sharma. And she revealed that she has a gamer son. I don't know if she would want to utilize him at all because I don't think she would want him to be bullied, but she could probably blow up a Twitch channel if he had one. Why not? Other Nepo babies benefit. I'd be like, blow up his spot, make him a famous gamer. She is media trained. Media training is very, very important. Everybody should be media trained. But I think it's cool she has a gamer son, which I'm sure helps her. And also I read an article that she started to game. So she not it's just like me spending more time on TikTok and Instagram to better understand the space. I'm really glad. It would be like if Kathleen Kennedy decided to sit down and have a Star Wars marathon and watch it with other fans. Like that would, I think, have benefited Kathleen Kennedy immensely, right? And I think it's great that Asha is going to go on there, interact with the fans, be in gaming spaces, and not only have that connection, but also see what's working and what isn't working from the player perspective. That to me is fantastic, right? Being like, yeah, that really did interrupt my gameplay. We should change that and stuff like that. And I hope this leads to more female executives who are succeeding. And so it comes to the point when people see a female executive, writer, or director, they don't feel like the thing that they love is threatened, but instead is in good hands. That would make me very happy. Very, very happy indeed. Fighting the good fight, and I try to fight it as well. Any questions or comments about this? Donna Langley is too quiet. I mean, I'm very happy that she's so successful, but Donna Langley is not public facing enough to help anybody. I mean, she's not hurting anybody, but she's not helping anybody either. Oh, that's great. I've seen Nintendo promote a couple of women. I think a woman is in charge of one of their Mario spaces too, right? Amy Pascal, she doesn't do a lot of interviews, but I think Amy Pascal, the way Amy Pascal was able to navigate and survive her scandal is also incredible. High Key is unhappy about how Asha is performing. If she goes full into AI, I think that would be unfortunate for her. Let's hope that doesn't happen. And that's interesting that you point out to young executives. I do think that's important. Again, I don't want to see ageism or phasing people out purely because of their age, but I think it's important to have a mix, and politics as well. I think, we've talked about the gray ceiling and how that's an issue in every conceivable industry and space. Resident Justice wants to point out that Asha has denounced AI, so that's great. That's important. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next. We have 3 stories to go, and I just want to make sure we move along at a good pace here. Boop. Oh, this is a juicy story. So, Avatar The Last Airbender. You're in danger, girl. It's not looking good. So, of course, they suffered some very serious leaks for Avatar The Last Airbender just a couple of months ago, right? With the new movie, the full movie having leaked online, which really hurt, its exposure. And a lot of people have already watched it before it ever debuts on Paramount+. And then also the hackers in a recent expose said they were planning to target the new Avatar series next. When people were like, why? Leave it alone. What's wrong with you? There seems to be quite a problem with hackers and leaks. And this is something that I think you might really see come to a head this year. It'll be interesting to see how this story progresses. And that's all I want to say on it. But yes, so that was very bad for how things turned out for Avatar at the beginning of the year. And of course, people were very frustrated at the end of last year that the new movie, Paramount moved it out of theaters to Paramount Plus, and people were devastated because this was supposed to be a big moment for not just Avatar, but for animation, right? So I don't know if hackers love Aang so much, Fahad, as they love things that other people love, so they can therefore make money off of those things. That is the difference. But another headline that came out just in the past few days, Paramount launched a gaming division, which will be very interesting. We'll see how that develops. Obviously Warner Brothers has a couple of gaming studios. Would they be folded into that if the merger goes through? Which, I don't know. Wait till you hear the next story. But it was announced in the wake of that the AAA, which I'm learning means the highest game there can be, like not just like some kind of video game that allows you to pass time, like a marquee, like a summer blockbuster, like it's meant to be a big game. So they were planning a AAA Avatar The Last Airbender game, and Paramount canceled it. That to me was very alarming that they would cancel that game. And then on top of that, the voice actor for General Iroh, Greg Baldwin, tweeted out, because he said he had 0 Fs left to give, that from his experience, the Paramount executives he'd been dealing with were really, he had some very negative words to say about them, but also said that they had absolutely no desire to help Avatar The Last Airbender. And that got a lot of attention. And I think it would seem to me that Avatar The Last Airbender, outside of the Netflix series, which has already been greenlit and is in the can, I think that Avatar is in real trouble. And I don't think that Paramount is interested in moving forward with it, which, I rewatched Star Trek over the weekend, and Star Trek has also a lot of progressive ideas as its foundation. And I wondered how Paramount would treat that franchise. I don't know why Paramount can't just have, if Paramount wants to have more conservative entertainment, that's fine. There's audiences who are interested in that, as evidenced by the tremendous success of Taylor Sheridan. But I don't know why that means they need to destroy their other very awesome, more liberal, left-leaning content. Why can't they have both and therefore have things for everybody? It's really incredible to me that they would be so against these IPs that they would be willing to destroy them. Or potentially, hopefully, sell them off. There's rumors that because the European Commission is worried about Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon being owned by the same, that Paramount might be willing to sell off some of their family assets. Probably not SpongeBob because it's worth so much money, but other things. And I think everybody's like, Avatar, for the love of God, sell it. And that would be phenomenal. I think Netflix would be a great, speaking of Netflix, I think Netflix would be a wonderful place to purchase Avatar The Last Airbender, especially as they're getting more into theaters themselves. And they have been not only, I think, a good home for the live action series, which I've seen. I've actually watched the new season of Avatar The Last Airbender. I can't review it until it comes out on June 25th, but I've watched it. And I think that Netflix has a wonderful history with animation, especially when you think about Castlevania and stuff like that. I think that would, and Netflix does very well with progressive fans. So I think that would be a great place for Avatar. Although I can see some of you want Universal for the theme parks. I don't know, maybe. I don't know. Universal though, where would it, then the things would be on Peacock. And Universal has, not a great history with 2D animation, and they're not really putting out any animated series, certainly not adult animation. I worry that a Universal purchase would make Avatar seem like it's for kids, instead of aging up with its fan base like they're trying to do. So let's see. Let's see. I just hope they sell it. I think it should be like the first thing they sell. People are like, get Avatar out of the door, get it out of here. And I wonder if they'll sell other things off, like Star Trek, because it just doesn't fit with what the Ellison's vision for Paramount, clearly. I think it would be better to sell Star Trek than to change it, because you would be going against what Gene Roddenberry envisioned when he created Star Trek. And so you just can't do that. It was a very progressive thing from the start, from its very beginning. Although Faye says Netflix likes to cancel things. They do, but they tend to then bring them back. Avatar is a part of Nickelodeon, Poke, but they would own it. So, I mean, they do own it right now, and they could easily sell these things. You could just sell the deal out from, they don't have to sell all of Nickelodeon to sell parts of Nickelodeon. They can sell IP very easily. Wild Wolver says, how can they legally own both NBC and CNN? Yeah, it's a real headache. So let's move to the next story, which kind of discusses this. Boop. Story number five. Oh, we got 6 stories today, baby. Okay. Paramount's really feeling the heat. I think they thought they were going to be able to push this through. I think they felt Trump would push it through, particularly because the Ellisons have such a close relationship with him. Not only Papa Ellison, Larry Ellison, but David Ellison has been going to Washington, D.C. a whole lot to really try and hobnob, rub elbows with the Trump administration. But the Trump administration has a lot of other problems, particularly this war. And I don't think they're particularly eager, especially since Trump went behind the scenes and bought a ton of Netflix stock. He's covered either way. I think that he has a lot of other things going on, and especially if public opinion were to turn against this deal, he maybe necessarily wouldn't care enough to really push it that far. So it's not going as they had hoped. So a lot of local attorney generals in all of the states are gearing up to fight this. All of the states, because, we got 50 states, and every single one of them has to allow this merger to take place for these streaming services to be available within the state. So that's a big headache, right? They could have a ton of attorney general challenges, and they're all apparently preparing them. Now, California, of course, should lead the charge. And one of the things that happened recently was that there was a Hollywood town hall with a lot of people from all different walks of life, particularly within the industry and politics, politically and legally. And they came together, and one of the trades reported on this town hall. And a number of people felt that if this deal were to go through, it would be the end of Hollywood. It would be the end. And I think that there's genuine concern about that. Certainly Hollywood as, would tip, this is a stream about balance. And Hollywood is such a magical thing because it's a good balance between art and business. But I think there is a real concern that the Paramount Warner Brothers merger would tip the scales too far onto the business side, and it would destroy the artistry of Hollywood. And there are a lot of other forms of entertainment that would be more than happy to come in and fill the space. So that's a real danger for Hollywood. Also, Hollywood is a place where you could always manage to somehow make just enough money or get residuals to stay in the game. But if they take the joy out of that and they destroy residuals, there will be a number of people who simply can't afford to be in Hollywood. And it'll drastically change who works in the business, who can work in the business. It would just be really bad. It would almost in a way go back to the studio system where you might have to work for a studio as an employee. No more free agents. And you would just work on whatever they told you to. I never thought of that before, but that could be the way that you might go. And yeah, that's right, Mystic. I think nepotism would run rampant in every regard, not just in front of the camera, but behind it and with executives, etc. Now, California, of course, needs to lead this charge because it's in their state. So the California Attorney General says he's gonna, but famous last words. Let's see if he actually does it, right? So many of our politicians and representatives let us down these days. The Democrats, who are the most incompetent group of people on the face of the earth, they're going to try and take it down. And you're like, the Democrats sometimes have the easiest of targets and they miss. It's shocking. You're like, it was standing right in front of you. It's giant. How could you miss it? And somehow they miss. And then a lot of other countries, like the European Union being the one to force Paramount to sell some of their family assets in order to approve the merger. So that's an element. But it's getting even more desperate, as on Monday, Paramount accused Netflix openly in a letter of a scorched earth campaign, like they're Billy Butcher and Homelander, of Netflix working behind the scenes to kill this deal. Ted Sarandos might claim that he's gone home, but apparently he's gone home to work. And in fact, Netflix, it seems, maybe feels they can kill this deal and then swoop back in. And the more I hear about it, the more I feel that they might actually be doing that. And I think everyone would be absolutely thrilled at this point. I mean, I think most people would prefer Warner Brothers not be sold, or to be honest with you, combine with Universal. But, you know, it's a tough situation. So they're complaining. Paramount is complaining that Netflix is behind the scenes lobbying politicians and even attorney generals to get them to not do this, right? So a lot of this rallying of forces apparently is Netflix whispering in their ear saying, "This is horrible. You should stop it." So that's pretty interesting. That's right. They're going to do a Trojan horse, J. Jonah Jameson. I love it. Full circle, baby. And then also Paramount went even further and said that Netflix is pushing the Teamsters to do this, which is very interesting. I think that's fascinating, right? So they're claiming that the Teamsters are becoming very aggressive against this merger, and Paramount says it wasn't their idea. Netflix is putting them up to it. Now, why is Paramount getting increasingly unhinged? Well, if this deal isn't closed by September 30th, remember from the negotiations, the ticking fee will kick in. And the ticking fee was supposed to be this great promise that would never need to happen. But it's looking pretty bad. So I'm sure Trump, by the way, has Paramount stock as well, so he doesn't care. You know, he's our Warner Brothers stock, so he gets to benefit from this. So, for some reason, I'm getting all these texts. So I'm going to turn my phone around. It's distracting me. All right. So anyway, 25 cents per share. They have to pay that starting September 30th per quarter if the deal has not gone through yet. So it's the ticking fee for a ticking clock. That's right, Fahad. And that's the equivalent of $650 million. That's how much Warner Brothers stock there is. So if they don't make this deal go through by September 30th, they're going to have to fork over $650 million. And if in 3 months it still hasn't gone through, another $650 million. So that's why I said here at the very bottom, perhaps Netflix will sue. They'll sue Netflix. I think that's what Paramount is setting up. I think Paramount is laying the groundwork for a lawsuit against Netflix to say that Netflix was a bad actor and intentionally thwarted this deal and cost Paramount $650 million. And they're going to maybe try and get it back somehow. I think that would be very difficult to prove, and I don't think Paramount is particularly sympathetic. And they're the ones who set up this ticking clock fee to push the deal through and to steal the deal away from Netflix. So I think, all's fair in love and war, and I think that Paramount got very aggressive towards the end, which is how, again, as I just said, they stole the deal away. And now Netflix is getting just as aggressive. So I think it's pretty interesting. All right, any questions about this before we go to the final story of the day? Let me check my messages. Okay. I love when I get a screener notification. Makes me so happy. Okay. Don't hate the player, hate the game. That's right, Britt. Faye, there should be a Ryan Murphy feud about this. That would be hilarious. But where would it air? I guess on Hulu maybe. It couldn't air on Netflix or Paramount Plus. I can't tell you what I got a screener for. I'll get in trouble. All right, let's go to the next story of the day, and then we'll go to the Q&A. All right. Boom, baby. I think you can tell where this story is going. Yes, Jem. Okay, that's how I want to start it. Okay. Jem and The Holograms is returning yet again. Don't forget they had a 2015 attempt at bringing them back. But I think we can all clearly see that this is a take to try and do a K-pop Demon Hunters. And, it's not a bad idea once you actually go through the whole thing. So, yes, Jem live action. Oh, look, my autocorrect made it Jem and The Holograms. That would be hilarious. Jem and The Holograms. You just cut to some guy named Jim being like, I have a band too. Okay, so anyway, yes, Jem and The Holograms was that's right, an Office spinoff. That's funny. So Jem and The Holograms was yet another animated series during the 1980s. And in the coverage for this announcement today, one of the trades said that, in fact, in cartoon syndication, Jem and The Holograms was more successful than He-Man and Transformers. I don't know if I believe that, but that's the sales pitch. That's a pretty good sales pitch. I'd be like, you got to actually show me the numbers. And I'd be like, it was the 1980s. No such data still exists. And I'd be like, you really lucked out on that one. But that's hard for me to believe. I certainly don't think it had the same toy sales. But that's what they're claiming. All right, so now if you're wondering, thanks to Echelon Angel, if you're wondering, what is Jem and The Holograms about? There's a picture of them, Jem and The Holograms. They do look fantastic, all right? So it was a woman named Jerrica Benton. That's right, it's Jessica, but you replaced the S's with R's. Jerrica Benton, and she was also Jem with her own band, The Holograms. And it was a Hannah Montana situation where she had an alter ego. Jerrica, nobody knew that Jerrica was Jem. And she also, by the way, not only ran a record company, but she also had a home for orphan girls called the Starlight House, right? So, it's a big thing about part of the show and, learn the lesson of the week and stuff like that. But also, she was able to make everybody not know that she was Jem, not with a blonde wig like Miley Cyrus did it, but that's right, she had her own AI, a holographic supercomputer. And back in the day, they just called it a supercomputer. Maybe that's what AI companies should do. They're like, it's not AI. It's a supercomputer. Aren't you happy with what it did? You don't need to know how it did it. That's hilarious. But yes, it was basically AI. But because they call it a supercomputer, everybody was fine with it. Okay, so yes, it was a giant supercomputer that I think her father had invented, right? And it turned her into Jem by way of hologram. I guess nobody went up and ever shook her hand or anything, whatever. And it was also meant to capitalize not only on the success of animation at the time, but MTV. And they had a lot of their own original songs and music videos. Now, yes, this sounds awfully like K-pop Demon Hunters, only they don't seem to fight demons. I'd be like, who do they fight? And they're like, they fight girls not having homes. And you go, okay, that's very noble, but I don't really feel it's going to sell tickets or get people to tune in. So they're going to have to fight something, right? So I'm like, think of something, all right? So I really do feel this is a very clever way to do K-pop Demon Hunters. I think to have a K-pop Demon Hunters in live action would be very difficult. The casting on this would have to be superb. It's almost like trying to pull off a Gotham City Sirens. If you do it, I think the rewards will be immeasurable. They'll be so fortuitous. But easier said than done. It's an extremely difficult thing to pull off. So, but I do think it's funny that, I think clearly the pitch was K-pop Demon Hunters. And so it's not a bad pitch. I think the scariest thing is how poorly the John Chu movie did. Pre-Wicked, right? Maybe he learned a lot there. But he, of course, tried to bring back Jem in 2015, and it was an absolute disaster. That's right, they fight the Misfits. I forgot about that. The Misfits is the evil girl band that they fight. This stuff's great. You could have a lot of fun with this, although I hope they also pay attention to how He-Man is not working out. But yeah, it could be really fun. Now, to me, the most interesting part of this entire package and why I would greenlight it if I were an Amazon Prime executive, and that's where it's going, Prime Video, is that Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan are making it. What a great idea. What a fabulous idea. They, of course, behind Westworld and Fallout. I thought Fallout Season 2 wasn't as good as Fallout Season 1, but it was still pretty good. It was still watchable. And I think and especially when you consider the technological aspects of Jem, that must be part of what's drawing them to the property. And I also feel that they have a good lock on what would get guys interested in this, right? Like, how do I get, like, I'm like, you got the girls and the gays, but how are you going to get any straight guys to watch this? And they're like, we have Jonathan Nolan. And I go, oh, excellent. That's a great idea. I think that alone makes me very interested in this. And I think Ella Purnell, it's a shame she's in Fallout because Ella Purnell would be an incredible Jem or a member of the group. She's definitely would have to be Jem at these days because her star is too big. But this is interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it does in the wake of, what's it going to be? The new K-pop Demon Hunters or the new Masters of the Universe? I think it's hard to tell. I think it's hard to tell which direction it's going to go in. So what do you guys think? Any questions or comments about this? I like Dancing Dog 60. It just might work, Jim. I added the Jim, but I think it goes perfect. No, not McKenna Grace. I don't like McKenna Grace. There's just something about her. I'm sorry. I'm sure she's a lovely person, but I'm not a fan. Unless Scooby-Doo blows up, then I'll be like, sure, put her in stuff. It's fine. But I'm just not a fan of McKenna Grace. I think they were mentioning her for something else. Yes, Supergirl. Not Supergirl, Wonder Girl. Cassie, Wonder Girl Cassie. And I was like, oh, for the love of God, please don't do that. I like Mason Thames. He actually just signed on for something pretty big. Oh, a lot of you like McKenna Grace. All right, I hope you're all going to tune into Scooby-Doo. I wouldn't want them to be teens. I would want them to be young adults. Yes, Degai Tai. McKenna Grace could play Cassie, which is what makes the rumor so scary. Like sometimes you see a rumor and you're like, that'll never happen. And then other times you're like, oh, I couldn't see it. Okay. All right, let's go to the Q&A. 10 minutes Q&A, and then I must go. X-Men Superfan. I've only seen Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat once, and I don't remember Tallulah Bankhead in it, but I did like the quote that you sent me from her. I thought that was pretty funny. Oace says, what are your thoughts about Taylor Swift singing this Toy Story song at the premiere? I don't like that song. I mean, I think the nicest thing I thought about the premiere with Taylor Swift is that she brought a VHS copy of the movie for the first movie for Tom Hanks and Tim Allen to sign. I thought that was great. I really like Taylor Swift, but she's developing a bad habit of making everything that she joins all about her. And I think that's a problem, like she's going to go to the Knicks game tonight. And I hope to God that, she blends in, I think things should be all about Taylor Swift when she's in her own space and her own show and doing her own concerts and stuff like that. But I think it's like you want people to want you there because, if you come in and you overshadow everything, I think then you become a negative, Like I saw this hilarious photo of the look Joan Cusack was giving her, and it was really funny. I do not think Joan Cusack appreciated having her there. I mean, maybe, I don't know. At least a little part of Joan didn't love it. Little Milo, I don't know how it happens. I don't even know if she's doing it intentionally. And that's awesome that Taylor Swift is just so famous that that's what happens, But I think she should try to discourage it just a little bit. I'll tell you one little thing, okay, that someone told me that was a good thing. When celebrities go places, if they want to discourage the paparazzi from taking photos of them, they wear the same outfit all the time. I think I saw a story about, what was it, Daniel Radcliffe or somebody, wore the same outfit for months to just get the paparazzi to go away because the photo loses its value because you can't prove it's a new event. And so a friend of mine pointed out that when Taylor Swift was going to all these football games, if she wanted to make it more about Travis and less about her, she could have worn basically the same outfit. And then the photos would not have the same value and she would just be there to support her boyfriend, right? So like that's the difference, you know? But I mean, hey, Taylor Swift's going for an Oscar. I think she's going to get an Oscar. So I think that's going to work out really well for her. Let's see here. Welcome, Lucas. All right, so Fahad says, I know you talked about the World Cup and how it might not affect movies with their empty seats, and while it's true, it's just $20. Oh, you think people might watch the World Cup at home? Potentially. It might be an issue in Europe, but here in America, we don't care about the World Cup. I mean, certainly not enough to watch like 2 to 3 games a day. So I don't think it's going to be a big effect here. X-Men Superfan says, do you think James would do a little bit of beefcake on David like he did with Vigilante? Oh, that's right. He did do it. He has a weird relationship with his Peacemaker cast. Like, for some reason, he wants them all to take their shirt off, but not in his movies. Favorite Joan Crawford film is by far and away Mildred Pierce. 1000%. Mahav says, with He-Man's failures, there's a chance they won't do the Gem series. No, I think they'll probably say, pay attention to what He-Man did that didn't work. But I think they're going to do it because it's the K-pop Demon Hunters angle. Oh, hey, Swifty. I'm sorry if I insulted you with my Taylor Swift comments. I can see you're a big Taylor Swift fan. Grace, are you going to cover Supergirl pre-sale tickets? You're my, yeah, so you're my favorite YouTuber even when you're criticizing Taylor. I just try and be honest. Okay, with the kindness in my heart. It's never malicious. I don't really think there's significant pre-sale tickets to cover, you know? I think it's, it's tracking at about 55, to open about 55. The World Cup is the biggest event in the world, and it certainly has an effect overseas for sure. Did I miss someone's super chat? Let me go back and see, who did I miss? Tim. Amazon Video canceled the revival series because Save Stargate because it's too much. Nobody asked for Jem, and why are you not having Stargate? Well, I think they want a K-pop Demon Hunters, and I gotta tell you, Prime Video is this hot space for shows right now. They've ended up doing an incredible job in the superhero space, and they have Spider Noir, and they have Fallout. I think Prime Video does a very good job with shows. That's right, Deck Officer. Spider-Man tickets go on sale on Wednesday, a week from today, and I think there'll be a new trailer as well. Mahav says, long-time watcher, first-time member. Just wanted to say thank you so much for your coverage. I'm so glad that you and your partner enjoy my coverage and my videos and live streams. That means a lot, and I'm glad you're a member. X-Men Superfan says, do you think All About Eve is Bette Davis's best film? Well, it's one of them. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane is, of course, a big one. She's also, some of her early work is also very important, like Little Foxes and stuff like that. The Disney Plus show, the Disney trailer tomorrow I heard was for a movie, not for a Disney Plus series. Muma says, hey, Grace, what do you think is the most surprising film so far this year? Ooh. I don't know. I guess Obsession. That's the headline, right? Dane had the same question. That's interesting. Dancing on Dog 60 says, how hard is it for writers to pitch original IP? It's almost impossible. If you have an idea for new IP, you have to introduce it somewhere else. A book, a comic book, online, something to prove that there's interest in it. Let's see here. Little Milo says, I saw Disclosure Day today, and it's on. I'm glad you liked it so much. I'm really glad you still enjoyed it. I think some people are going to like it. You know, I really disliked it. It's too hippie for me, you know? Let's see. Orion says, Grace, you have a diamond now. I love it. You got a diamond. It looks beautiful. Ryan, I can't say that. I'm from New York. I have to support the Knicks. Go, Knicks, go. Stupid air conditioning. I better get going. Do I think I'll like Supergirl? My prediction for Supergirl is that I'll like it, but I don't think it's going to have broad appeal. I think that I'm going to like Supergirl. Benjamin says, I thought I turned that off. Okay. What's your favorite, Barbie, Bratz, or Jem or Monster High? Ooh, Barbie. Barbie's the classic Barbie all the way. Oh, and thanks, Kareem. I'm glad you like my shirt. I haven't worn this in a while. I was looking for something different to wear, and I found this in the back of my closet. And then Peyton says, have you heard of The Wolf Among Us? It's an upcoming game based on the Fables DC comic. I think hasn't it already been around, that game? I love Fables. Love it. All right, sorry about this noise. All right, I better get going. And Danny, I will be, as for shows, I'll be reviewing weekly. I'll be reviewing X-Men 97 and House of the Dragon weekly. And doing non-spoiler reviews when the embargo lifts as well. All right, everybody, I had a great time with you as always. There might be a live stream tomorrow, but if not, definitely on Friday. I'm hoping to probably, if I can, do live streams both days. All right, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye-bye.